Hey, welcome back to JG3 Reviews, where I review fountain pens, ink, paper, all that good stuff. And every now and then, I get to share with you pens that are shared with me from viewers and subscribers of this channel. I've really come to enjoy doing this because you guys find pens that I would not have been aware of. And so I've got to review some things that I just would not have otherwise done. And today, that's what I'm doing. These pens are from Daniel Hechter of Paris, a design firm that sometimes commissions fountain pens from makers in Germany, France, and elsewhere. And I know about as much about Daniel Hechter and fashion as Cow Pie knows about pies. So, I'm not going to talk about that side of things. Instead, what we'll do today is get a first impression of these pens. I'll tell you how they're made and all that kind of stuff, and how do they write, because that is the bottom line for me. How do the pens write? So let's flip that camera and dive right in. All right, if you're into stripes and plaid, this first pen is probably the pen for you. Of course, it has the Daniel Hechter name and logo on the metal clip, which functions well, and then an all-plastic body with two green plastic domes at the finial for the cap and at the end of the barrel. Then when you open up the pen, this trim section, does that go with the cap? Does it go with the body? Place your bets now and then be prepared a little later to have it a little bit wrong no matter which you choose. It does not go with the cap. Let's look at the cap first. When we look inside the cap, it is, of course, white plastic with this plaid applique on the outside, and then a plastic sleeve to prevent dry out, which I've not tested dry out, but a plastic sleeve inside, and also that's where your snap cap joins up here. Then on the pen, you have a white plastic grip section and barrel, and when you open this up, this is why I said there might be a surprise, it actually does split in the middle at the green trim ring, because that is the plastic section that houses the cartridge or the converter. This did not come with a converter, but it does use standard international cartridges or converters. The nib is a very simple number 5 steel nib. This is a fine. It is marked DH and fine. And then I think because of the simplicity of the nib, that breather hole really kind of stands out. And you would have known this was a fine, even if it weren't marked, by the tipping material there at the end of that nib. So very simple number 5 nib with a plastic feed. Fairly standard operating procedure these days for pens in this class. But let's take a quick look at that other pen, and then we'll see how these pens write. Okay, so this second pen comes in a really nice presentation box. We'll set that aside so we can take a closer look at the pen, but it does have a very nice box, and is a metal pen that is black and gold striped. So it has a black lacquer on the raised portion of the stripes of the pen, and then that gold color in the grooves. Really nice looking pen. I think it presents quite well. And it is, as I said, a metal pen, so it has a nice heft, although it's not overly heavy at all. Just nicely done. That cigar shape with the black plastic finials, and that cigar torpedo shaped pen, and a nice looking clip that is fairly stiff. This one's stiffer than that other one, so you might have a little trouble with some shirts with that just sliding over the material, but certainly a sturdy clip. And then, of course, on the trim ring, it is branded with Daniel Hechter, and that's all on that trim ring. But a nice-looking, presentable pen. And we open up that cap, and it is just a snap cap with a little bit of a snick. And let's look at the inside of the cap first. So it does have a plastic sleeve inside that metal cap. Notice the metal there is not just overly thick, but it does have a plastic sleeve, which hopefully would help it with dry out. I've not had really issues with that. And then you have, let's go down to the barrel and the grip section. There's some interesting things here. So the grip section does have grooves in it as well that aids in your grip of the pen, and this nice gold-colored trim at the end of the grip section, and a dual-toned number 5 steel nib. Let's look at that nib, which is the opposite of the other pen. These pens are opposites in every way anyway, but this is a very ornately engraved nib with, of course, the name Hechter and their logo and fine engraved on that nib. And I don't know who made the pen or who made the nib. If you have that information, please do share in the comments below. But nice looking, kind of a striking look for the nib. And then, of course, the standard plastic feed that is ubiquitous in the fountain pen world these days. And when we open up the pen, we find that it does have a converter. Now, let me say, I can't remember from the notes whether this is, just having a brain freeze, if this converter is the one that came with the pen or if this is one that he's just using with the pen. But it did come with a converter, and it's standard international cartridge compatible, just like the other pens. So you had this, and that is a plastic grip and feed section, and then that nib. So very standard stuff there. Now let's fill this pen up with a little bit of that pelican blue and see how these two pens write. Okay, let's start with the plaid pen, which, by the way, does post really well, has a nice balance to it. This is the Daniel Hechter. I'm going to call it DH for short, and I'm going to call it the plaid. I actually don't know a model number or name for this pen. It has a fine nib, and it writes just as it says it would. And then this is the Pelican Royal Blue. Which I find to be just a nice, reliable ink. A lot of people do. And that's, speaking of reliability, I also like, it's not an overly wet ink, but in this pen, look at that. Flow is good. Let's go ahead and do the keeping up with the flow test. Just a little bit of gibberish, and it does just fine. This is Rhodia paper, by the way, a dot pad, and you will notice there's a little bit of audible feedback, which my microphone tends to exaggerate, but it's really a good smooth nib. Jump a few letters here. And I think it writes quite well. It's a comfortable pen to use. I wasn't sure about this bulge in the where the barrel and the grip section meet, if that might be uncomfortable. I mean, it's smooth. I wasn't worried about that. But it's just kind of to me, it's an unnecessary step down. It's just a design flourish. But that's what you would expect from a design firm, right? But it's a comfortable pen. Like I said, really nice balance. You're not going to get any kind of a line variation or anything like that. It's not really made for that. Just a standard fine nib. But one that writes pretty well. I like it. And I think the pen writes better than what I expected it to. I didn't have low expectations, but it writes well. Okay, so again, I think this gold and black pen is striking. I can see the appeal to that. And you would think that it would post, but as the owner of the pen stated, it is again confirmed, this pen does not post. It is a nice enough length that that's not really an issue to me. It does make it a lot lighter than it would otherwise be, but it's a comfortable pen itself. There's a bit of a step down, but it is a sloped step down, so not bad at all. And this is the Daniel Hechter, and I'm going to call this just the gold pen. I don't know a model number or name for this one either. And this is a fine, but you will notice it is a broader fine. I don't know if it was broader when it came out of the box. The owner said that they tuned this, they're left-handed, and so they have tuned this nib to suit their left-handed use of the pen. And I will say this, done a nice job. Now, I don't know what it's like to write with it left-handed, but I can tell you that this one is a smooth nib. And like I say, I can't tell you how smooth it was out of the box, but it's smooth now. I can tell you that. And again, this is that same cartridge with the Pelican Royal Blue. Like I said, just a really nice smooth nib. Let's do that wetness test here as well. For comparison, there's a little bit less ink, but I may have put less ink there. And again, this is just a number 5 steel nib, so you're not going to get any kind of variation or anything like that. Just a standard line. I'm sure not going to push it. This is somebody else's pen, but it writes well. And if you compare these two pens, if you assumed, which may be right or wrong, if you assumed that these pen nibs started out in similar places, then this is that much more impressive. I think there was probably from the very beginning more material at the end of this nib just looking at it. But as you can see, it writes a nice line and very smooth. So as I said, really good looking pen. I like the style of this one a lot. This is more of a fun pen for people into stripes and plaid, and a good write, both of them. They write well. I'm impressed. You never quite know what to expect when a pen is marketed by one person but made, commissioned from somebody else. What specifications they commission and all that kind of thing is sometimes a bit of an unknown, especially in this case. I had no expectations because I've never written with a pen from Daniel Hechter before, but both of them actually turned out to be nice writers. Okay, we're going to do these size comparisons both at a time. So there is the Daniel Hechter in gold and black, and here is the Daniel Hechter in plaid. We have here a Jinhao 100 in that really nice orange, a Faber-Castell Lume. This is the New Moon 2, I believe it is, 2 or 3, whichever one that happens to be. The Pilot Metropolitan and a Platinum 3776. So that gives you an idea of the size of these two pens. Okay, I want to say thank you one more time to the owner of these two pens. I couldn't find a lot about them beforehand, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And they both turned out to be good writers, and I really enjoyed them. So thank you very much. You've given us a window into something that actually it's hard to find information about, and they turned out to be good pens. So if you like this video and our other content, please like, share, subscribe, and God bless you, and have a great week, and I'll see you in the comments below and in the next video.